Welcome back to the Animite Tales podcast. I am Joe, and we are joined with Alex and Sam yet again for another podcast or discussion about superpowers, specifically because we're all nerds, and there's nothing you can do to take that away from us. So, this was a terrible intro. So,
You have to call us out, Joe.
Yeah, that was actually really hurtful. My feelings were hurt.
Stereotypes.
You're stereotyping us as nerds, Joe.
I mean, you are. Let's move on. So before we actually go in, how have you been feeling about the streams that we've been doing with the dev plays? Do you think that they've been going well for the game? Do you think have you been enjoying them?
I know our one fan does. Likes them. He was listening to them today.
Actually, Juice watches the streams, and some other people
really?
do as well. Yeah, well, we don't just have one person who just watches them.
Oh, I've been tailoring all of this just to Connor. All this time, I've just been tailoring it just to Connor. Shout out to Connor.
Just because you know
our audience of one.
Just because you know one person doesn't mean we only have one listener. Sorry, Connor,
might as well,
but we have to say this. I'm sorry for everyone else out there who feels like they've been ignored. So, so I think they've been sort of working quite well, especially because of the most recent death, which everyone should definitely check out. It happens around about the last hour of the session of the 3 hour session. So if you guys are interested in that, or you just want to see that one bit, maybe at some point I might do a worst moments snippets of every single episode. But
and if you're going to call it mistakes were made.
No, call it person was very foolish and doing a very silly thing. Because
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what we're talking about, like worst moments. These are best moments.
No,
you'll have to agree. That's the best moment so far.
It was 100% avoidable. And speaking of which, we need to avoid this topic because we should be talking about stereotypes in superhero or superpowers style things. I'm going to say just superpower. I think I called it superpowers and stereotypes. Kind of like the whole idea of S&S, like similar.
Yeah,
to
S&S.
Yes, so obviously there are a ton of them. This is going to be a little different than the usual podcast. Instead of us explaining what the stereotypes are, we're actually just going to talk about them. For instance, the stereotype that we all know is that if a person has just and only the power of super strength, that's their one note. They only have super strength, and because of that, they're not very intelligent. That's the usual stereotype that goes with that specific power. Can you guys think of any other specific stereotypes that go with superheroes, supervillains, or superpowers?
Oh, I've got one actually. That's my pet peeve in superhero things.
Okay.
It's super intelligence, like giving you extra powers, like the power to rewrite reality just because you're really smart, or just giving you telekinesis because you're just so smart. I mean, super intelligence things annoys me anyway. Because
I think that's a misnomer more than a stereotype, because I don't know, like there's quite a lot of super intelligent characters that I know of, and I didn't even know this was a thing, other than like maybe 2, if not 3, cartoon spoof characters.
Oh, it's not that as well. There's also Lucy as well, which is like the Audacity movie, which I like but dislike.
That's more again. That's more of a misnomer than it is.
All right. How about this then? The idea that people with telepathy and telekinesis are super smart. So it's like the other side of the coin. One note. Super stroke characters are supposed to be dumb.
I think that is birthed from Professor Xavier. I think when people say I have telekinesis or telepathy, they think. I think okay. This is my pet peeve. Part of yours. When someone goes, I have the power of my mind, and basically that what they mean is telekinesis and telepathy. And when someone says my powers are telepathic, and then they have the ability to control physical stuff, and it's like that's telekinesis. And then they go, yeah, I can read minds. And it's like, yeah, that's telepathy. Oh, I can also like crush their spine. That's telekinesis. These are two separate powers. Like telepathy and telekinesis are two completely different things. I think that's my biggest pet peeve. That's kind of, I guess you could say that's the stereotype. Everyone who has telekinesis or telepathy always has telekinesis.
Except for Professor X.
Yeah, except for Professor X. Looking at you, Scarlet Witch from the MCU, although I guess not now anymore. I don't know. But
I mean, I don't think she could read people's minds, could she?
Yep.
She has like all power over reality. She has the MacGuffin powers.
She does have
basically
mind MacGuffin powers, but she's not super intelligent just because that she has powers.
To be honest, whenever you mentioned super intelligence, I thought the immediate thing is the more smart they are, the dumber they tend to be. Not even bigger the brain, the dumber they actually tend to be. Because I'm super smart, but then they do stupid things. You could mention at least three times super smart people do very dumb things.
Well, okay, Sam. So, what's the stereotype that you specifically that gets on your nerves? I guess with superpowers.
I have a stereotype of power, but it's different for the different genders.
Okay, go on.
I should say that. Invisibility. Okay. If you're a male with invisibility, you're instantly a pervert.
Yeah.
That's all you do with invisibility. Because if you're a female with invisibility, you're just shy. That's why that's what it is. You're invisible because you're shy.
Okay, I'm going to add to that. I'm going to add to that. Why is it that the stereotype, and I've seen this, men with invisibility, like in One Piece and in Misfits and another one, I can't fully remember it, they have the ability to turn invisible and all their clothes, regardless of what the material is. Female characters who have the ability of invisibility always have to be naked or have to find special clothing that turns invisible with them.
There's a very easy reason for that, Joe. There's a very, very easy reason for that.
Yes, but I don't like it, and this is why I agree with you. And Sam, I think you've pretty much hit the gold mine of this. That is the most stereotypical one for both separate reasons, but we all know that it's for the same reason.
I mean, the only one that hits that differently is that character in The Boys, but it was done as a gag. It's the fact that he reappears and his junk's hanging out, and it's like,
Yeah,
and the Invisible Man from your favorite series, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah, fair enough. Although it is more of a common thing that again they have to take off their clothes if they're female. But again though, they play it more of a gag with him being naked, because not any other reason, but specifically they also state that thanks to him being able to turn invisible, or thanks to his skin being so durable he can turn invisible, therefore he's also ridiculously resistant to physical damage. But yet he can be tased pretty easily.
And he was a pervert, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Yes, so it matches it. Also, Invisible Man. Just going to say that.
Invisible Man only in not the book, but only in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, where he is a
movie. The movie.
In the movie,
very
Hollow Man.
No, not the movie. I'm talking about I'm talking about the comic books, where he's.
Oh no! In the comic book, in the graphic novels, he's an absolute monster. But in the movie itself, it's he's just a thief, So he's. Again, that's kind of
Kevin Bacon's Hollow Man. I don't know.
I mean, Kevin Bacon's Hollow Man's awful as well. Not the movie quality. I mean, the actual person. He's awful.
Even though Kevin Bacon is well loved so far, for now. For now.
Don't you dare! Kevin Bacon is a national treasure.
Not your national treasure. So that's that. I've got another one that I specifically do actually have a pet peeve for. So that was a really good one, and Sam, I hate you because that one is probably the best one. In all honesty, and I'm so annoyed that I couldn't get to say it. But I would say
I have others.
No. We'll go around. We'll keep going around.
No, sorry.
So here's specifically one that bothers me. People with the ability of time powers, any kind of time power. We've said this before. It's usually the MacGuffin power, and I think that we've all spoken about this during the time power discussion, and I think we all can agree it is the MacGuffin power, but it's annoying when it's used either as the character can't control when they use it, but it's even more annoying when they can control when they use it, and they just decide not to. So, if anything, this is more of a stereotype of the audience stating that any part of time power is a MacGuffin and is quote unquote, oh, that's convenient when it doesn't work, or oh, that's convenient when they choose not to. So I think with that, the stereotype around time manipulation is no one can ever win with it being a good power or a bad plot point. Like it's just always the power that, although it's really cool and although it's very useful, the ability to rewind or fast forward or travel through time is way too broken to be allowed to be in a series without it basically ruining it. The only series that does it well are actual time travel shows, rather than shows that have powers that then allow time travel to exist. Because at some point, it does kind of create the MacGuffin. So I think that's it. Like, time travel powers are just the MacGuffin. I would like to see one where someone uses time manipulation similar to the way that they kind of do it in JoJo's, but then it kind of goes a bit awry, where it's like, there's one guy who can rewind time but only up to 6 seconds. There's one guy who can stop time but only up to 5 seconds. There's another guy who can see into the future and skip time but up to 10 seconds at a time. But the most ridiculous one is a guy who can create a bomb where whenever it goes off, and he triggers this particular thing where basically he says, oh, if you tell anyone my secret identity, then a bomb will explode, killing you, and then it will rewind time for an hour. And it keeps happening, and it keeps putting this kid in a death loop over and over and over again. And it's like, all of these time powers are really useful and really interesting and really kind of cool, but they are these powers, but very heavily limited, so as to not completely like just go, oh, why don't they do this and just rewrite the entire existence of the show. It's a very unfair power because it gives the user an unfair advantage rather than something. So I think that's the only time, in my opinion anyway, that's the only time that I think it's ever been well used, when it's heavily limited. Do you have another one, Alex?
Oh, I do, yeah. So we were discussing like a while back with Sam, I think it was the idea that people with pyromancy powers, pyrokinetics, have to be kind of like dangerous in some way or very like fiery.
I think you and I spoke about this.
Anger.
Yeah, we may have told that. Yes, like the fire inside. It's like, why can't they just be chill? I mean, just because you have like fire powers doesn't mean you're necessarily just a pyromaniac.
Like Iroh.
Yeah.
The only character that I can remember or believe that isn't a character who is hot-headed.
Even then, he used to be, he used to be like quite a bloody general, but then he just had to learn patience from the other nations, and now he's just real chilled out in his old age.
Yeah, okay, fair. Damn it, Iroh, you've also broken your original stride.
Oh, Iroh, you war criminal.
The original Human Torch. He was pretty chill. He was a robot.
No,
he but he was a robot though. He was a robot though.
Sorry,
on fire all the time.
It doesn't count. It's a robot. It's a piece of machinery. It's an equipment.
How dare you say that about the original
doesn't
Human Torch?
Have
he killed
a
Hitler.
Soul.
Yes, he does.
I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of words. Well, so does tanks. All right, you're just like saying, "Oh, how dare you be mean to a tank? It killed Hitler," and it's like it's still a hit.
Yes,
I was another example of a fire user who is a hothead, and I was actually going to say a fire user who isn't a hothead. However, I want to ask your opinions on this. So, the first one is Endeavor from My Hero Academia. He is kind of a bit of an asshole. I'd say kind of a bit of a. He is a very big asshole. And he actually does use aggression and emotion to further increase his power. You then have Shoto, his son, who has fire and ice. But it is later discovered that when he feels free from his father and he actually can allow his emotions to flow, his firepower becomes more powerful, but he's not aggressive. He is seemingly almost a little sociopathic in the terms of he doesn't know truly how to work through his emotions. But he tries, so less sociopathic, more, I guess, like, he's, you know, a little bit damaged. But then there's another character who he does get his power fueled by emotion, and he does use it through the powers of hatred, but in certain times he just feels the passion for wanting to be better, but eventually it does turn into a darker side, and he does use it for only aggression and hatred. But as a character, as the archetype, when he's not using his fire powers, he's actually really cool, calm, collected, and a bit almost chilling. He's psychopathic almost. His name's Darby, and again, I don't want to spoil anything because I know neither of the two of you have watched it, but I recommend you watch it. It's really good.
To be honest, I was going to say, remember you said the middle guy, Shiho, or Shino, or whatever he's called? Son?
Oh,
he actually follows the stereotype, the opposite of the Ox's stereotype of people who use ice powers. They are always cold, unemotional, and
well,
pretty much psychopathic.
Yeah, fair enough.
He follows that stereotype as opposed to the fiery stereotype.
Yeah, and he does have an ice power. And okay, I can see
that's because I know he has ice. That's why, because like I've never seen anyone with ice powers that isn't that way. In some respect.
Fair enough. I'm trying to think of that. Maybe come back to me. But Sam, did you have another one?
Besides the ice one, the mystic. This is the one I did discuss with you earlier.
Yes,
was
magical.
Everyone who is mystic and is like highly mystic, I'm talking about here, quite magical. They always have to be incredibly cryptic.
Yes.
And usually not really helpful. Or if they are helpful, it's only explained far later on that they're being helpful.
I mean,
like,
obviously,
people like Doctor Strange, Doctor Fate, especially like the Phantom Stranger and Madam Web. Them two in particular give very vague warnings and like recommendations. Like they never explain themselves until much later on. You realize,
that is very true. There's a lot of characters like that. Merlin in Seven Deadly Sins. You obviously have, as you said, Doctor Strange. I mean, one of the most iconic moments is when he just points his finger up once to Iron Man when he asks him, "Is this the one?" And he just points his finger up and he goes, "If I told you, you wouldn't want to know." And later on, he points his finger up, and that's this whole thing that goes on. And it's that thing of you don't know, and then at the end, it's like, "Oh, you foresaw that he was going to do all this, whatever." And it's just this thing of like, again, using time in a form of like a MacGuffin way, but it is the mystic that sort of brings it back around to it's not if he uses it as a cryptic bullshit sort of like one-liner. So I agree with that. I don't think I know many magic users, like many, as you said, knowledgeable magic users, like actual wizards.
I mean, like when I mean magical, I mean like not people like Raven, and kind of want to say what do you call the one that's like a stage magician that wears the hat, the woman? Zatanna.
Well, I was just...
They're kind of... They are mystic, and
to be fair,
in the original comics,
Zatanna every now and again can actually be pretty cryptic. Like,
yeah.
I mean, Dr.
Fate saying Raven.
Dr. Fate is more... No, she is definitely cryptic. She barely talks about her father until eventually she actually has to say, "Oh yeah, my father is actually this giant demon who's just summoned out of my forehead."
I've been talking because that was it. Like in the original comics, like the very first comic she was in was she just made Robin have this weird dream sequence as he was fighting terrorists.
Oh, come
like one second he was fighting terrorists, the next second he's with the Teen Titans fighting this weird monster. And he's like jarring what these two things are happening. She just does that because she can. I'm kidding. That's the first Teen Titans comic.
Wow. Okay. So I actually do have another stereotype. Thanks to Sam coming up with this one. So as we've seen, like obviously emotional powers and everything like that, and that's all good. I was gonna say this is a stereotype that I actually see quite a lot. It's that those with immortality or invulnerability are usually considered or believed to be evil. Like not invulnerability specifically. I mean actual immortality, because usually
they're jaded.
It's usually the way that they have to gain it. Now I want to point out like the form of like, oh, I have to gain immortality, so I have to sacrifice whatever, or oh, I was born with this ability, so I can now have immortality or whatever. They're usually evil. Now that is a funny stereotype because I'm not saying that everyone is, but usually when people go, because I've had this where I go, yeah, and then this character has you find out this character has immortality. Oh really? And so they're a villain, are they? That is a question that has happened way too many times. Like the amount of times that I'm explaining a series or explaining a character in a series or a game, and like, oh, so they're immortal. So when are they a boss fight sort of thing, or when do they become a problem for the heroes? It's like never, or why would you assume that, like sort of thing. It happens way too often, and the two biggest ones I want to point to this of characters that are immortal that aren't necessarily bad guys, and that's, I guess you could kind of say Wolverine, but I'm not going to count him because it's just longevity rather than actual immortality. But I'm going to say Nathan from Misfits. If you don't know what that is, watch Misfits. And then you've also got Deadpool, who I wouldn't necessarily consider as evil. Now,
no, he's just kind of a jerk.
He is
chaotic.
Yes, he is chaotic, but again, as we've seen, there are moments where he's good, there are moments where he's bad, there are moments where he's just neutral. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily count him as evil because he got his powers. He's just a chaotic and a very sort of strange, erratic force. Before then, he just becomes even more so of that.
I have an example as well of a not necessarily evil, immortal.
Okay.
The Highlander.
Exactly.
Yes,
that's the one I was thinking of, Alex.
Aren't there other immortals in that show that are also
they are like a race of immortal humans where the only way you can kill them is by cutting off their heads and like taking their life force. Because there can only be one.
Alex, I think you mean they're aliens from the planet Zarg or something.
We're not counting the quickening. We're not doing that. No, we're not. I'm not doing that.
But I will admit there are evil ones because there is the
Kurgan.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it is. I mean, they're a bad. What I'm saying is that they're not necessarily evil because they're Highlanders. No. There actually were quite a lot of Highlanders who were just living their lives, just minding their own business. It's just the ones that wanted more power just started slaughtering them all.
It is more of this thing though that a character that, as you said earlier, you actually almost tipped the hat too soon, and I interrupted you there, which was the jaded character that eventually becomes sort of psychopathic.
Well, yeah.
And they eventually just start going, what's the point? Why don't I just do all this crazy stuff and just get away with it? Like, I think it's Vandal Savage from DC. You also see it with, you kind of see it with Thanos, because he actually kind of has immortality. And you kind of also see it with a couple of other characters in certain different things. For instance, you see it in a few times because there's about like 3 or 5 immortal characters in Seven Deadly Sins. There's like one character who's trying to gain immortality through one specific means or manner in, I think it's DC or Marvel, and eventually like they see everyone they ever known and love die, so they're just trying to find out ways of either pissing off all of the wrong people to try and get them to kill them, or trying to figure out other ways. I mean, there's another one which is in Samurai Jack. There's a warrior, a Norse warrior, who tries to fight a coup, and he goes, "Oh, you want to be a great warrior? Then I'll turn you into one." And he basically turns him into this stone giant, and he's like this powerful warrior, and he's just. He wants to die, but in the way that he says it, he goes, "I wish to taste defeat in battle." You actually find out that he's cursed, that even no matter how much he wants to die, he can't ever stop fighting until he has actually been rightfully defeated in combat. And when he's then defeated, he actually then says to Samurai Jack, I can now go to Valhalla. And that's the end of the episode. So it is that thing of like characters that aren't necessarily evil. I mean, I don't count Thanos in this specific example, but characters that eventually kind of become a little unhinged or specifically deranged through their determination of wanting to be defeated or killed because there is no other way.
I think it's just it's the way the human brain generally just can't conceptualize things. Like we can conceptualize, setting things on fire and just being super strong or super smart, but like living for a really, really, really long time, like living forever, just grappling with eternity. I don't think our minds can take it. So we create these sort of stereotypes like, oh, yeah, of course you'd go absolutely cuckoo bananas if you were to live this long. You'd just get tired. So you'd pray for death because that's not natural. I think that's why that is.
Honest, I was going to mention it, an immortal from Spider-Man, who does do very, very bad things to keep his immortality, essentially. I mean, Morlun, the enemy of the Spider-Verse series.
Morlun.
He's alive, but he has a hunger, essentially. And he gets hunger. He feeds his hunger by killing spider totems.
Basically, like a form of vampirism.
Kind of. Much, except he doesn't get hit. Except he doesn't get hurt by sunlight.
Well, no.
Anything like that.
I said like vampirism. I didn't actually say like he is a vampire.
Kind of. He just has to pretty much. He just goes around killing Spider-Man or Spider people.
Obviously,
and then that's how he feeds.
The irony here is the fact that we actually just say vampirism and just sort of like don't even talk about that as an actual, technically a disease, a physiological race, or even a magical ability, let alone a superpower, because technically it kind of is, really, if you think about it, because if we're talking about physiological changes, which are, like in the Spider-Verse, vampirism, and that's another power that technically grants immortality and technically is a form of immortality that basically turns a person evil in a way, because they hunger for flesh, and sometimes they do just sort of turn into that rather than actually sort of fighting it.
That was just my reference. I wanted to make a Spider-Man reference.
Yeah,
pretty much.
And he's got to get it out.
Yeah, I couldn't think of any other way to bring it into stereotypes.
No, that's fair enough.
I thought might as well mention Morlun.
I actually do kind of have one specific one that I'm thinking of now, which is a stereotype, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, but the stereotype to steal powers. That is the biggest one of that stereotype is, this person is evil. The stereotype is, oh, they have it, so therefore they're just going to take them regardless and keep them for themselves or use them for nefarious means. Like, for instance, as you said, Parasite. He has the ability to absorb life essence or at least drain stamina or energy, and then he realizes, oh, I can gain powers from this. So I'll, as you said, chain them up and then absorb their life essence and gain this power and keep coming back and feeding on them. And the same with the Absorbing Man, and so on and so forth. We've seen this time and time again. Obviously, I said All for One when we were talking about power stealing and so on and so forth. It's the biggest stereotype. There's only like a couple of characters that I know that have the ability to permanently take powers. And
yeah, even in Misfits, there's you may not have gotten there yet, but there's like one in particular that can not only take powers but can take like body parts as well.
Wow!
It's like,
no, I haven't. No.
Yeah, yeah, they're a dick, unsurprisingly.
yeah, and it's that thing of like another reference is there is a character who has the ability to take and swap and transfer powers to people, and kind of just more like uses it as a dealer, kind of like a drug dealer, and it is that sort of thing of like, not necessarily a good guy, but he does do it within a sort of lawful way. If he still sees that you have a really good power, he's not going to take it off you unless if he actually offers you a load of money and willingly takes the money and gives up the power. But he can take a power from an unwilling subject, which he only, I believe, does twice. One which is justified, and the other one is he he grants himself self-justification through the means of, I needed this power to save someone. I needed to take it and then give it to someone else to use it, because he can't use those powers. But, yeah, it is the most obvious one. Stealing powers is a stereotype. The stereotype is, just their dicks.
I mean, you're literally taking something. I mean,
Yeah.
again, it's our human brain saying,
Theft.
"Oh, well, your power is, is stealing things, so therefore you must be a thief and you must be bad."
Therefore, you must be bad. My power is to be bad, therefore you must be bad. Nuh-uh. I mean, kind of.
Well, that's not even a thing, because, you could have someone who just steals powers from bad people. It's like, no, you do not deserve this, murder man. I will take your powers from murder away from you.
Yeah, but
Actually, this is a spoiler. I was going to say, Alex, turn your ears away.
Okay.
The main character in Charlotte has this ability to take people's powers, and he is a good guy.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I mean, at the beginning, he's not so much a good guy because the other side of his powers is quite. He can pretty much take over people's bodies, and he uses that for perverted means, for 10 seconds. So it's like, look at someone, and then 10 seconds later, he goes back into his body.
Okay. I mean,
if he goes into people's body.
I came back. What's it?
Okay.
What's up? What are we talking about?
I need you to go away for another
no.
Okay.
I think we're done. I think we're done with the Charlotte one, because I'm now going to move on to the last part of this podcast, which is if you could create a new stereotype, like for instance, say for instance you are either a person who controls the media of superheroes or superpowers as a genre. What is the new stereotype you'd create? How would it work, and why would you create this? So this is a very strange part of the subject that we've done, but I want to see what you would do.
I don't know really, because stereotypes are usually just to be avoided. I would say, unless it's like there's a story reason. So it's like it's hard to come up with. Although if a funny one would be that people with telekinesis would be clumsy. That might be a good thing, because that would have the hilarious thing of you can control Earth, but not in a very way. Or there's just you can easily just screw it up, because Earth is a
you
natural
create an earthquake
thing.
And therefore then you
Yeah.
then fall over because you're literally moving the Earth underneath you.
Yeah.
Or you get motion sickness or something.
Yeah, it's you just you create a fissure in the to save the day, and get the water away from the townspeople, and to avoid a flood, and then you just spend the rest of the day yakking up thank you, that took a lot of effort.
I think that's quite an interesting one. I think that's more like I think that has been used as a downside for a telekinetic powers. I know that it's been used for a couple of downsides for certain people's powers, like a zero gravity power, and they just start hurling up because if they make themselves float, the feeling of no gravity starts making them feel sick.
Also, it gives it a good disadvantage. So people wouldn't be abusing their telekinetic powers if it gave them that much of a downside. You only got to use it for for the big reasons.
Actually, there's two characters that I realised about this. They're technically not telekinetic. Well, then one of them might be. One's a mutant from X-Men because they're part of the Brotherhood, who can I think control Earth, but I don't know if they can control Earth and just anything, or if it's both. But basically, he can either control Earth or basically infuse vibrations into things, and it messes stuff up, but has a bundle of different downsides. For instance, it can give this guy a headache, and sometimes even make his nose bleed from concentration. But this other guy, there's a one from My Hero Academia. He can create vibrations into things, and he can actually use it to create massively powerful shockwaves into the ground, and it can create huge earthquakes, break apart objects, buildings, and stuff like that. He can even do it on people. But it creates a horrible recoil to his power, and he's been sort of over 2 years he tries to build up that recoil, and there's a moment where he it gets hit by this shockwave attack, that if anyone gets hit by it, they basically are paralyzed temporarily for like 5 or so minutes, if not half an hour or an hour. But this guy is like getting back up, and it's like, yeah, all of my body's limbs are numb. And it's like, oh, this kid shouldn't have been able to get up by that. And it's like, yeah, his power is literally vibrations. He says, like, my powers have a recoil, so I've been sort of getting used to weaker shockwaves. Being hit by that, it was twice as bad, but I'm sort of used to it now. And he goes, the first time that I've ever been thankful for my recoil of my own power. So I mean, I guess that kind of stereotype could be pushed further, that Terrakinetics powers are quite difficult, and therefore can create certain recoils through the vibrations through the earth that they're messing with. What about you, Sam? If you could create a new stereotype for a power or a superheroes or supervillain style.
Alice, whenever you say clumsy, I imagine these Terrakinetics, like, they fall over, but before they fall over, the earth moves so they don't fall over. So they use their Terrakinetics to essentially fix up their own clumsiness. That's what I imagine when you meant by clumsy. But the stereotype I would like, which kind of is actually in Life is Strange, which does involve time travel.
Okay.
Is people who can stop time, which I admit she can't. Actually, she can in one. But anyway, people who can stop time be artistic. Or like that kind of way, because they freeze time and then they just like put up at their own like paint boards and just begin painting this like the serene scene.
That's
with everything
really
being
cool.
like frozen. Yeah, have you ever seen Judge Dredd? Dredd, the 2012 Carl Urban film?
Oh yeah, with slow-mo, yeah.
Yeah, slow-mo. It looked all beautiful, but imagine if it was just frozen in place. There's just a guy sketching over it or, painting it.
That'd actually be brilliant, because some people do that thing where it's like you have to take in the environment for a few seconds and then turn around and then paint it. They use that as a joke in the first series of Avatar, the third season of the first series of Avatar. But it is actually a thing where people do that, where they look at something for about 4 seconds, turn around and never look at it again, and draw from memory what they saw. Imagine the ability to stop time and just capture that moment for as long as you want.
You have as much time as you want to hone your skills as well. Like, if let's say, no, this painting's rubbish. I'll do it again.
What I'm hearing is either perfectionists or artists as the stereotypes of time stoppers, basically.
Because it would be quite funny, just like in the middle of a park, just pause, and then you just see the next, like you just see everything frozen, and just a guy walking in with like a wee tripod and the wee painting set, and just lifting his thumb up, just nods, paint.
I'd have to say that is probably one of the best ones, and I can actually see that being used.
I would like that to be a stereotype. That'd be a funny stereotype.
I think one specific stereotype that I would actually like to create for superheroes or the superpower genre is, at this point, another thing that I completely forgot, which is actually one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up, is it's made me realise that there is a second stereotype that is nowhere near as big of a stereotype for immortality, which is annoying. Instead of them being evil, they're annoying because they don't care. They can't die. Because it was Misfits that made me realise that. But there are other characters, like Deadpool annoys the hell out of so many characters, and they beat the crap out of him. They tear him into pieces, but he still regenerates. There are other characters like this out in the world who have healing powers or regenerative capabilities or immortality, and they just can annoy whoever they want, and it doesn't matter. Anyway, but the one that I wanted to make up was actually a completely different one, which is I guess I kind of have made this a stereotype in a lot of my games, which is it's okay. So with catalyst physiology, you've got characters that not necessarily always steal powers, but experiment with them, experts on power, and it's more like they act higher and mightier than anyone else because they feel familiar to everyone else through the knowledge of their powers. And I don't know if this is necessarily a stereotype that we've seen before. It might very well be, to be honest. But it's that thing of, like, say, for instance, like, this character who can mess with other people's powers, or at least, again, this is not a character who can steal them, but can further, like, copy and paste them, or even experiment with a small amount of DNA and figure out how they work and stuff. And because they've done this so many times, they almost understand every power to at least either a fundamental or a complete atomic level of understanding. Like, they know every single thing about it. And therefore, because of this, they're very cocky with how they speak to almost any power user, because they know the ins and outs of how they work. So they could never go, oh, I'll burn this whole place down. Really, I know exactly how to stop that from happening, because your powers are based on fire. I just simply cover you in a bunch of flame retardant like foam, and you can't summon flame. Or, oh, your abilities to turn into water? Don't worry, I've got a couple of tasers in the back. That kind of thing of understanding even the smallest detail of a person's power, and this character just feeling it, knowing that they're not unkillable, but feeling untouchable by any power because they understand it to such a level of a degree.
It's almost kind of like the Sorcerer Supreme sort of thing, isn't it? Like, you've got this sort of understanding and sort of enlightenment of the universe, so it's like, everyone else is kind of like, oh, these poor fools, they think they know, but they do not even know.
I guess technically, and that means, if anything, catalysts are basically the equivalent of wizards and sorcerers who have understood more about the universe than anyone else. And at that point, I guess I've failed at creating a new stereotype.
Well, the lesson here, folks, is that nothing is original.
I have goofed. So,
but it's like, it's with a superpower understanding rather than a magical understanding, so...
Yeah, but it's still a stereotype of some course. But, hey, if you guys enjoyed that, thank you very much for joining us. This will be part 1, because we might actually do this again at another point where we actually come up with more stereotypes and try and come up with our own again, and hopefully I won't fail so miserably. But thank you all for joining me. It has been wonderful. Definitely check out the new Dev Plays, and definitely check out any of the other videos that we've done. We've also done one with Cookie Swagger, because I've done a video with her, and we will be doing one with Sam. We'll be doing one with you soon, so can't wait to get you at the campfire.
Solving the great and lauded cover.
Exactly. So if you guys are interested in hearing stories from other people's tabletop RPG games, I don't know why I just said games at the end of that. If you are interested in hearing other people's stories, then definitely check out Animate Tales. Hit the notification bell, I guess, or just keep checking out the channel. Thank you all for staying with me, and just as my stereotype is, I'm going to end this now. Ciao ciao for now.